Everybody, this is Jim from the Pain PT. Good to see everybody today. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, or if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do so if you want to get more alerts to these videos. I'm really happy to have a success story here again today. Tai, coming all the way from Kenya, which is pretty far distance for me. Good to see you, Tai. How you doing today?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me.
We just talked off air a little bit how thankful I am for you to come on and share your story, because I think the more stories, the more people can learn about this, the more word gets out, the more it's helping people. So I'm hoping your story will help, even if it helps one person to move forward in their recovery. It's going to be a good thing. So I'm going to turn it over to you and just have you share your story. Maybe start in the beginning, and we'll go through it.
Sure. I've been an athlete my entire life, and I always, growing up and in my 20s, I always had just a lot of injuries that some of which were obvious injuries, but I was a distance runner for a while, and then I was a competitive cyclist for a while. Um, but most of my injuries were weird, like inconclusive MRIs. They would just kind of like come and go mysteriously, or they would linger a lot longer than a normal injury would. Um, and I always just attributed it to, being fragile or, whatever. I used to say, I just take longer to heal, is what, like, I used to tell people, I guess. Um, and it wasn't until, it was frustrating, but I didn't really think anything of it until probably like I was in my 30s. And then I got some really weird um, things happen to me. I had one knee surgery, um, and that, and it was a minor knee surgery, but it led me to having shooting pains down both my legs. Um, And for over a year after the surgery, I tried so many different things. I ended up on Lyrica and then ended up in the ER because I ended up having horrible withdrawal symptoms from Lyrica. And so I just like vowed never to take medication again. And then
Yeah.
I
And
had
those
another
symptoms
weird
were,
thing.
just to clarify, like, you went in for a knee surgery and you come out with bilateral pain going down your legs isn't very normal, right? Isn't typical.
Yeah, and no one could explain, what was going on. Absolutely no one. They just threw pills at me. And I've always been really sensitive to medication, so I don't side effects and then withdrawal and all that kind of stuff. Um, and then it just goes away. Like, and I never really, and no one ever explained, well, why was it there in the first place? Why did it go away? Then I had
How long
another
did that
weird
take
one
to
where
go away after the knee surgery? How long did you deal with that for?
at least a year. Yeah, I honestly, at this point, it's been 20 years.
Yeah, that
So
was way
that
back. But at the time, you didn't know anything about this. It just kind
that
of
was the
faded
first
away on
knee
its own.
surgery. Like that was like even before I had like that was like decade before I even learned about this kind of work. But then I had another one where my foot swelled up for no reason. And it swelled for like a year and a half. I couldn't wear shoes. I couldn't wear socks. If it got warm, it would swell up. And so I lived in San Francisco and I wore flip-flops every day, even when it was
Wow.
cold outside.
And there was no, again,
Um,
I want to highlight that. So actual big physiological reaction, foot swelling up. You didn't
yeah,
have anything wrong. You didn't do anything. You didn't injure anything.
nope. Nope. I felt a little twinge on a hike one day, and it started after that. But I think now looking back, it was because when I was a runner a long time ago, I had gotten a stress fracture in that foot. And I think what actually happened is that little twinge triggered that fear that I just did something, that I was just walking, I was just hiking. There's no way I created any kind of horror. I didn't twist my foot or anything. I literally was just walking. So I think it was just fear. And that fear led to a year and a half of my foot swelling.
Isn't that, I want to
Um,
stop for just a moment and highlight that because it's incredible. And I do believe exactly what you're saying is true. I think a lot of people don't think that's possible or don't believe but this is very possible. The associations the brain makes and the power of the brain is immense. So yeah, to cause you to have swelling for over a year over
Yeah.
nothing. But again, the brain is so sensitive that it can do this.
Yeah, and in my head, I had problem areas in my body that were weak. And in now looking back on it, there was nothing weak about those areas. It was just my brain had an association and a fear about that area. And so even to this day, if I feel a twinge in any area where I've ever had an actual injury,
Yeah.
immediately I feel my fear, go up. And I know exactly what's happening, but like I notice it a lot more. Like I've even noticed caught myself like, I feel something in my leg and I consciously think, is that the bad leg or the good leg? Like I even have that thought. And if it's the
Mm-hmm.
good leg, then I don't care
Mm-hmm.
because there's no meaning, there's no story behind that. And then the pain goes away. But if it's the bad leg
Yeah.
or the bad
In
hip or the
in
bad foot,
quotation marks, the bad leg. In your mind, it's the bad leg.
then my brain goes to a different place and it's danger, danger, danger. If the pain's in, even if the pain is bad, but it's in a place I've never had pain before, it's like, hmm, no big deal.
Yeah, it's
It's
truly incredible.
crazy.
I literally got off a call just before you with talking to a person about her shoulder, and we just talked about the same thing. She said I rewired my whole other shoulder to not have pain, and I had it for 7 years, and it's gone away. I don't think anything of it. I use it, but this right shoulder now, all of a sudden, this right shoulder is different, right? And that was her first symptom. That one's the one she's had injections, and in her mind,
Hmm.
there's still she sees it differently.
Yeah. Yeah, because like the neural pathways they're dormant, but they're still there.
Yeah,
So anyway, I haven't even gotten to the actual
yeah,
thing
we're
that
to the meat of
triggered
it.
me to get into mind body, and that was another knee surgery. So the foot thing eventually went away by itself. But I went to all sorts of doctors. I like to tell the stories that I actually went to like a circulation expert who
Mm.
put tiny little blood pressure cuffs on each on my toes.
Wow, never heard
That's
of
like that is how like desperate I was. It's like get
that.
somebody to tell me what was wrong with my foot. Anyway, so then I had another knee surgery. I was still a competitive no, I wasn't a competitive cyclist anymore. I had pain in my other knee that was getting to be um so bad that it was keeping me from even just like hiking and stuff. And honestly, to this day I still don't know if I needed that surgery or not. But because the pain would come and go.
Hmm.
So, but it would like so severely when it would come. And they did find something when they went in there. So
Yeah, I was going to ask
I
you,
still don't
what did
know.
they find in there? Do you remember what it
They
was?
said I had a hole in my cartilage,
Hmm.
which they didn't see before the surgery. They thought they were going to just go in and clean it up. And they actually went in once they went in, they found a hole in my cartilage. They did microfracture surgery, which when I woke up and told me that they did that, I was so angry because I was like, I didn't give you permission to do that. And I knew the chances of that surgery working were really low. I knew the recovery that was required for that surgery, which is basically 8 weeks no weight bearing and like living in a constant passive
Hmm.
motion machine. Yeah, so I woke up and I was livid. Like I can't
Yeah.
believe you did that without asking my permission. Um, but point being, according to them, the surgery was successful. All future MRIs were clear. I did the recovery to a T. I did everything they wanted. I slept in the CPM machine. I did everything that they told me to do because I was adamant that I was not going to end up in the same boat as the first knee surgery.
Yeah.
Um, Although that had nothing to do with what they did anyway. But anyway, so that that knee surgery led me down a very, very, very dark journey. Um, I basically forgot how to walk. My leg
Hmm.
freaked out. No, my leg did not freak out. My brain freaked out so badly that it's like my all my reflexes got completely shot and I literally forgot how to walk. Like I had
Hmm.
to
So
I
this was
was
how long afterwards? This was like a
Well, so I couldn't put any weight on it for 8 weeks. And so once
yeah.
I started doing physical therapy, I was in excruciating pain. And I actually do remember one moment that might have been the trigger to all of this, in that I was like one of the first few days of physical therapy. I was on a leg press machine and I was going from completely straight, just bending my knee. Like it was straight and I was just doing it very, very slowly bend. And my knee like locked, which I've never experienced that happening before. So it's not like
Mm-hmm.
something I would have expected or anything. I don't know why it just wouldn't bend. And I, because I tried to bend it and it was so excruciating, the pain of trying to go from straight to bent, that I screamed so loud that like everyone in the PT office just like went silent. And my PT, unfortunately, like I feel bad now, but she was literally straight out of school. I don't think she had any idea what to do with me.
Yeah.
And she just like looked at me and she's like she didn't even know what to do. And basically from that moment on, I was scared to go from straight to bent.
I was just about to say, so
And
that one episode really, really scared you immensely.
it was so excruciating that, like, I think that is part of the reason why I kind of couldn't walk anymore, because
Yeah.
I couldn't fluidly go from straight to bent.
Mm,
And so I developed this weird limp, this weird gait, and I was terrified of going from straight to bent. And so, like,
mm.
my
So
physical
you
therapy just
avoided, you
like,
basically avoided that
yeah,
movement. Yeah.
that that
Out of
that
fear.
position, that movement, yeah. And so I mean, fast forward a year, I went on disability from work. I was housebound because I was so scared to go outside because I didn't trust my leg. I thought if somebody bumped into me, my leg's instinct, because it was so scared of bending, if somebody bumped into me or pushed me, my leg would hyperextend because that
Mm,
felt safe to me. Not, but I didn't know how to catch myself. I didn't know how to like bend it to catch myself. So that just reinforced and reinforced and reinforced. And then
hmm.
I literally didn't leave the house because I couldn't go to the supermarket side. There's too many people. I'm scared to get like bumped by someone.
Yeah.
I went
Yeah.
to gait specialists. I went to neurologists. I was convinced that they had like cut a nerve in my leg, and I almost got a nerve conduction study, that really painful test that they like shunt send shocks through your system. And the
Right.
neurologist was like, I don't do it. The
Oh, good.
neurologist told
Finally, you
me
got a
not to
good
do it.
neurologist that told you something good.
He's like, you don't have nerve damage, I can tell you that. And I was like, but I have something, I was so convinced. And it took, I think, I don't know how many years of going through like different. I tried these pants, that these like like new technology, like lycra pants, like spandex, um that would like light up, like you had an app that like connected to the pants
Okay.
and it would show you what muscles you're using and
Yeah.
like which muscles are working harder. And like I was trying to use it to teach my leg how to walk right, because I could
Mm,
see which month. And I mean, I tried everything. I tried
yeah.
everything. And
Yeah.
then honestly, I don't, the first thing that I probably did was I finally found a physical therapist. And ironically I found him because he was like a specialist in like gait training, and he used a lot of technology in his office. And so he would put like these sensors on me, and then he would watch me on a computer walk, and he would like show me what I'm doing wrong. And so in the beginning, I think his strategy was still very mechanical, but then once he got to know me, I think he realized how scared I was of everything
Mm,
that had to do with like bending my leg. And so instead of like focusing on like, this is what you need to do to walk right, like, because you can't think about walking, like it's
yeah.
just
It's a
it's instinct. And
natural
so
thing. Yeah.
he realized that he needed to deal with my fear instead of like trying to like logically retrain me how to walk. And honestly, I remember one day we were on the treadmill and he's just like, you know what, let's try to run. And he just like started pushing pushing the speed up, 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 up. And I had no time to think, which I think was his point.
Hmm. Yes.
And I just started running. And he's like, are you in pain? I'm like, no. He's like, because you don't have time to think. when you're walking, you're thinking so much about
Mhm.
everything that you're doing
Yeah.
that you're freaking out. And so your body knows how to do this. Like obviously you're running right now. He's talking to me while I'm running and I'm just like I'm like, what's going on? Um
Brilliant.
and
Brilliant.
I think that was kind of a light bulb moment, but it that fear was such a huge part of it, but that didn't really like it didn't convince me that that was why I was in pain. I knew that I was really scared, but I thought I was just really scared because I was in pain.
Right. You didn't
So
link
anyway,
those
he
two
did.
together closely at
I
that
didn't
point.
know, and at some point, someone told me about Curable, and I started learning about. Um, Actually, you know what? It was even before Curable. I read Norman Doidge's book,
Yeah.
the brain that heals itself. He has
Hmm.
two, and it was the I read both of them, and I literally like read each chapter, and I told my husband I was going to try each of these, and I actually flew to Canada to Toronto once because one of the doctors that's talked about in Norman Doidge's book is a guy who like does light therapy.
Hmm.
I went and saw him, and I stayed in Toronto in a hotel in the middle of winter by myself for 2 weeks to go see this guy. That was before I really knew the mind body connection. But the point is, I learned about Michael Moskowitz, who is a doctor in the Bay Area,
Yes.
um, who was starting to do his techniques are a little bit different than
Different. Yeah.
what
People
I
probably don't know about
really.
him. Maybe share a little bit about, I know about him, a little bit about what he,
Yeah, I
but
mean, he was like the very, very first person who and honestly I felt like he was learning about it at the same time I was because I was such an unusual case for him. Um, but he has these workbooks where you actually visualize your and maybe he's changed. It's been a while since I've seen him, but you visualize the map of your brain, like a picture of your brain,
Hmm.
and then you kind of visualize the pain disappearing, and that is supposed to like help you calm your pain. Like I think his tagline is like take back the map or something like that. I don't remember
Hmm.
exactly, but some of some of his stuff worked and some of his stuff didn't really work, but it's what started me down the line of like this is a
Yeah. In the
brain
minds, in
thing.
the brain. Right. Right.
Yeah, and so then I eventually found a physical therapist who was actually she worked with stroke patients, and I convinced her to take me on as a patient. And she probably helped me the most out of anyone because she would have me do exercises that scared me, like things that made me go from straight to bent. And while I was doing those things, she would tell me to, name fruits that start with M, or,
Hmm.
say the alphabet backwards, or like multiply two numbers together that, things like that. She would just distract me. And then I'd be able to do whatever it was that she wanted me to do with no
Hmm.
problem. And so there was just like, it was building, it was building, it was building. And then I just started devouring book after book about neuroplasticity. And I started learning about Alan Gordon, and I started learning about, and then I think that's how I found Curable. I started doing Curable. I worked with, I think, one or two people from the Pain Psychology Center for a while. And it kind of slowly started building.
Hmm.
But at the same time, I was still doing I think like 4 or 5 hours of physical therapy a day. I mean,
Oh,
it
wow.
was ridiculous because I still felt like I was weak and I still felt like there was structural, like physical things that were causing me to be in pain.
Hmm.
I knew it was connected. I knew the fear was important. But I don't think I realized how much it was really just one thing. And so it was a slow process for me. It was a really slow process for me. Like I haven't said this, but I'm actually a chronic pain coach now, and the only reason I do it is because of everything I've been through. And so one of the things I always tell people is like there are these people who are like book gears. They read Sarno or they read, The Way Out by Alan Gordon, and they're like, oh, it's a it's a brain thing. I'm fine. The next day they like feel better. And I'm just like, no, that was not me. I honestly think it's a lifelong thing for me. Like I still have sensations. They just don't scare me. And it's not like every day I'm in pain, but for me, it's a conscious decision to be scared of that pain or not be scared of that
Yeah.
pain. And
So
like
that, so you
it,
really
it
started to highlight and realize the fear was the predominant, factor in this,
yeah,
which a
yeah.
lot of
And I
people
think
think it's not. They think, oh, but yeah, maybe it affects it, but and I think that's something to really highlight because a lot of people I talk to, it is. And again, nobody, the doctors aren't going to tell you that. People don't believe that.
no.
But like you saw for yourself, it was the underlying motion, you could say, driving this.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that was really important for me is that I was in a rut. I was in a mental rut, and like the same physical therapist I was telling you about that was like worked with stroke patients. This was, my husband and I were living in the Bay Area, and he had gotten a job in Uganda, and he was like stalling leaving because I still was like, I need to be near doctors. I need to be near Western medicine. And so I we kept putting off moving. I really wanted to go, but I was scared to go. And my physical therapist that I was telling you about, she actually just said to me, she's like, you know what? I think the best thing for you to do is to leave. I think you should
Mm.
get out of your house that you associate with pain. I think you should get out of your job that you've been on disability on, and then you were working from home. And like, she's like, I think you don't need me anymore. You know what you're doing. And we did. We left, and I improved. And I think in the first 6 months of moving to Uganda, I improved more than I had in like 5 years before that. And I was doing no more physical therapy. I completely
Oh,
stopped doing physical
amazing. It
therapy.
just again highlight that you stop 5 hours a day of physical therapy.
Yeah.
You none of that, you're improving. So it's like it's so oppositional here,
It was
paradox.
just, yeah, I went and I started living.
Yeah, you
Whereas
started
like
living life.
before it was ruling my life. Like
Right.
all I did every day, all I did was try to get better. And it was like
Right.
now I, tell people, I'm just like, if I in my coaching, I'm like, I give people homework, but I'm like, don't do it too hard. Do it
Yeah,
if you
don't
feel
make it
like it,
into a job, a
People who
full-time
tend
job.
to get chronic pain are so perfectionistic and so driven that
Yeah.
it's really hard. Like, okay, go try this technique. And then they do it for like 5 hours. And you're just like, no, it's
I mean,
not.
I did
That's
that
exactly what you
myself in
want.
my own recovery. I took the breathing, I took some breathing classes back in the day, and I got so obsessive about it that I would
Yeah.
monitor every single breath I took all day. It's like ridiculous.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I was putting so much attention on my leg that everything I was
mm,
doing was backfiring. Everything I was doing was backfiring. And so, yeah. So, like I said, we moved out here, no doctors, no PT, no nothing. I started running again. And yeah, I mean, I still had some fear, definitely.
yeah.
I remember we went on a backpacking trip the first year we lived in Uganda, and I tell this story now to my clients is like I had a mantra in my head because it was like the first backpack. It was a 5 day backpacking trip, and it was a lot of up and down, and I was so scared of the descending. And I just like wrote this like script, and I just repeated it to myself, just like reminding myself that this all has to do with my fear. I'm safe, I'm strong. And I
Mm,
got through it, and I
love it.
couldn't believe it. And
I
so
love
like,
it. Yeah.
but then I still have these things. Like I said, like I feel like it's a lifelong thing for me. Um, I'm such an active person. Like when we go, my husband and I, if we go on a holiday and on a trip anywhere, it's always some kind of active thing. And I know now, because this has now been probably 4 or 5 years that like I've been kind of recovered, but I know if like we went to Nepal couple like part way through the Uganda when we lived in Uganda, because now we live in Kenya. We went to Nepal, and we're supposed to go trekking for 3 weeks. And 2 days before we're leaving, I wake up in the morning and my foot hurts like badly.
Hmm.
And like I just now I know, like I did the Tour de Mont Blanc this past year, just a few months ago. About 2 weeks before that, all of a sudden I have knee pain. Like
Yeah.
whenever I have a trip now, I know I expect it. I almost laugh at it now. It's still a little scary because I'm like, I have this trip I've paid for. Like, so you always kind of have that little doubt in the back of your head, but like,
Yeah, that's that
um,
fear, right? So
none of
it's
them have stopped
interesting.
me. Like,
No, no. Well, now you're over the hump, and I think you're alluding to the idea that look, we can't always control the unconscious mind, but as
yeah,
long as you know what it is, you're good. Like you said, it's kicking up
yeah,
the anticipated fear, anxiety reaction in a somatic way. But now you know what it is. I think we talked at one or two sessions, right? About I can't remember what you were
yeah.
doing. A couple things creeping up at the time.
Yeah, so I'm pretty sure actually we talked because I that is one thing that does sometimes trip me up is telling the difference between a neuroplastics and pain
Mhm.
and the structural pain. And I think I'm pretty sure that I talked to you. I had some hip pain 2 years ago um, that I thought was neuroplastic because I had it in one hip and then I it went to the other hip. But like a year later, it went to the other hip and it felt just like the first one. And the first one was definitely neuroplastic. It just kind of like went away. Um, and it was also right before an event.
Mhm.
It was like the first race. It was a fun run, but it was a this race where you run through the Masai Mara National Park with lions and
Wow,
all that stuff.
that's cool.
They have like lots of security to make sure you don't get eaten. But
I was just gonna say,
um,
are you getting chased by an elephant or like a lion?
yeah, they make you stop if there's any like wildlife around. But yeah, you basically like run through the Masai Mara, and I had been looking forward to it. I hadn't done a race, like any kind of organized run in, I'd say, more than 20 years. And so I was like really nervous, but really excited to do it. And probably 2 months before it, I started to get hip pain. And so I was so convinced it was neuroplastic because I was so nervous about it. Um, and so I kind of like just played it safe and I didn't push it too much training. I mean, I wasn't really racing, I was just doing it for fun. Um, but in the end, it was a real injury.
Mm.
Um, and I did the race, and I ended up on crutches for 3 months. I had a stress fracture in my hip, and I don't know if it was a stress fracture that was a stress reaction, and then it developed into a stress fracture during the race, or what. But
Right.
um, it was a real thing. So
Yeah,
I'm
and that's
pretty sure
important to
I
note too, that we can have real things. And I think, like you said, if you have something like that, that could mess with your mind a little bit, right, with terms of distinguishing TMS versus a structural condition.
Yeah, it was behaving strangely. So looking back on it, like I should have gotten it. I did go to a PT, but I didn't go get a scan or
Mhm.
anything like that. Even after the race, when I was I could not put any weight on it at all. I still waited 6 weeks to go get an MRI because I was still convinced it wasn't I still was convinced it might have been neuroplastic, even though
Yeah.
it was like excruciatingly painful. I mean, I've just heard that neuroplastic pain can be that bad. And so I
It
was
can
like,
be.
oh,
That's the thing. It can absolutely be. So, and you had it in the other
yeah,
hip, and but if you look at
yeah,
the history
yeah.
of that leading up to that, was your training at a higher intensity or higher level leading up to it? I
I
mean, more
mean,
typical.
it wasn't, I'm pretty surprised that I ended up with the stress fracture, um, but yeah, I was definitely running more and I probably just increased too fast or something
Yeah.
like that. But
Yeah.
I also think that a couple of things compounded it. Like I think it was a stress reaction and I ignored it. And then the physical therapist I was working with also kind of assumed it was just like something minor and he had me jumping on
Mm,
it. This was
mhm.
after the race. This was like when I was
Oh,
already like in a
okay.
lot of pain. He was convinced that it was nothing that bad, and he had me like start jumping, and I'm pretty sure that like actually pushed it over the edge. But
Yeah.
anyway, the point is that yes, like that is something that I struggle with sometimes, is that knowing the difference between something that's neuroplastic and something is not. And then when I have little niggles, as I call them, if they're in places where I have had structural injuries in the past, then like that, like I was saying before, it kind of like spikes my fear a little bit more. But if it's
Yeah.
something like I wake up in the morning and my foot's hurting, I'm just like, I just laugh. I'm just like,
Yeah,
well,
like when your
that's
foot swelled up and you
yeah,
didn't do anything. I think, a nice rule of thumb, as a physiotherapist or physical therapist is to just ask yourself, is there anything I did physically that would merit this? And you could argue in that case, okay, yes, possibly you were training, increasing training, then jumping on it and more than usual. Okay, there was some physical component. And then you would maybe get that checked out. But in cases where you're like, you know what, there's absolutely nothing, or it's so mild,
yeah.
to just kind of check yourself and ask yourself. That's how I kind of look at it. But
Hmm.
if it's severe pain, yeah, get it checked out. But it could also be TMS because severe pain can easily be TMS. But I think the easiest way to do it is go get it checked out if you're in doubt, especially if you think maybe you did something. Get it checked out.
Yeah.
No, I mean that's the easiest thing to do.
Yeah, and that's what I tell my clients too, but I also find that sometimes like the reason I waited so long is because I in my entire life I don't think I've ever had an MRI that was like 100% conclusive. It's like it
Yeah,
could be this. Or they say you have a little bit of arthritis, as a
right. Of
45-year-old woman, yeah, I have some
course.
arthritis like everyone does. Um so I just sometimes worry that it's just going to give me fear for no reason. And so
Right.
sometimes I
Right.
actually hesitate to get scans because there'll be some question, and then that question will remain in my mind. And so that's why I waited when I
Yeah,
did.
I
But
understand. I have people who
I've
wait,
learned.
yeah, out of fear. But I think,
Mhm.
it's hard. It is very hard when you have the TMS personality of fear and
Yeah,
you're let's say an athlete and you're pounding your body or you're working your body through things that you could have real injuries. So I think if you can, it's important to distinguish those things. And again, the simplest way is to ask yourself, what have I been doing? Does this make any sense that it could be physical or structural? And if it even
mhm.
makes some sense, then maybe get it checked out. If it says makes zero sense, if you say, oh, I woke up with it, or I just lifted my arm one time, okay, that makes no sense. And
Yeah, yeah.
but I know what you're saying about that. It can stoke the fear and anxiety in you for sure.
Yeah, and since I've gone through I went through Alan Gordon's training to be able to become a PRT coach, like
Yeah.
I'm a lot more, fluent in what exactly is the evidence, and especially since I talk to people about it all the time,
Yeah.
like in a strange way, I it's like I'm preaching to myself at the same time. It's like, am I doing these things that I'm telling everyone else to do? And it's like
Mhm.
it's actually a good reminder.
It's a good reminder.
um
I know. I agree.
it is.
Better practice what you preach, right?
Exactly, exactly. I like sometimes finish a session and I'm just kind of like, do I have I been doing that? Like I should probably be doing that too. But I think one of the things I was watching a lecture by Dr. Schubiner, I think in one of his courses, and he said something, and I've read every book. I've like, watched every video there is on TMS and PRT and all of the different things. And I usually don't learn anything new. I watch it because like it's interesting to me. Like I just participated in the PPDA P PPDA a conference a couple weeks ago, and
Mm-hmm.
it's all interesting to me, but usually I don't find anything new. But
No, yeah.
something that Dr. Schubiner said in this like very basic intro lecture he gave was that pain is a decision.
Mm.
It's an unconscious decision, but it is a decision. And for some reason, that phrase like really resonated with me. And
Mm.
like, and I don't know what it is about that like way of putting it, but like I now repeat it to myself almost daily. Like if I feel something or I doubt something or whatever, and I don't know why it has such a huge effect on me when I think about it that way.
Yeah, maybe sure,
Um,
because it's important, I think, for people like people get these aha moments where they have these little clicks in their brain, like you're saying. Maybe what do you think it is for you? That phrasing of it, it's a decision. What does it do for you?
like I think it's because, just realizing that your primitive brain does things. and decides things by itself. And um and it's just based on like your emotions, it's based on your history, it's based on your experiences. It's like it's making a split second, like,
Hmm.
is that dangerous or is that not? And it's
Correct.
just that's as simple as that. And so if it's something simple like, that's hot, take your hand off of it, like, of course that makes sense. But when it's in an area of your body that you have a history with, like I have, it's so much more complex than that. And so I think, like I was talking about earlier, in that, like, sometimes I take a moment and I'm just like, if I was feeling that same sensation somewhere else in my body,
Hmm.
would I care?
Hmm.
No, I wouldn't. So
Right.
why do I care about this? And
Yeah.
so in that, I kind of process it like that. And as soon as I process it like that, it tends to just
Dissipate. Yeah. Well, you're looking
dissipate.
at it, like you said, you're looking at it psychologically now, like why.
Yeah.
So going, well, this, of course, this is why I had injuries here before. My brain's,
Hmm.
some marker in there about this. It has an association. But right, if this is on the
Yeah.
other side or somewhere else in my body, I would probably be like, ah. So yeah, so that works for you. That's great. I like those things
Yeah.
where people can find ways that they can put this in perspective, I guess you could say,
Hmm.
a different way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. That is good. Yeah, I think whatever it takes, and sometimes people hear it a certain way and it just resonates or clicks in their brain, and those are great
Yeah,
moments.
and this was even recent. This wasn't even like, this was like, as I feel like I'm a recovered person, but there's
Hmm.
still things that you can
Hmm.
continue to help you process things. Because it's also, I think, unfortunately, easy to fall back into your old patterns. And
Hmm.
so if you don't keep up the so-called work, and forget what you need, all these things, which is actually part of the reason I really enjoy being a coach, is because I can't forget because I'm talking about it 24/7. But
Yeah.
like, some people have told me that they warned me before I said I wanted to really do this, because I this was a complete change in career for me. And people kind of warned me. They're like, well, just be careful that you don't, internalize your clients'
Hmm.
issues. And I was like, is that going to happen? Gonna like get all of these other people's,
They put
um,
that into your head.
it,
Yeah.
yeah. And I was like, because people warned me that that could potentially happen, and that could also be really kind of stressful, and that could also kind of like
Hmm.
impact your own. And for me, it's kind of been the opposite, in that for me, it's really solidified my beliefs and my um, how confident I am in this work, more than anything. And so it's kind of done the opposite for me, um, which
It's
so
great.
far
Yeah.
it's
Yeah. Well, I
great.
think
But
you see the evidence. Like I always tell people, I wish I could share with everybody all the stuff I hear because it's just fascinating and amazing, and the power of the brain is immense and it's incredible. So it does solidify. But I've worked with other coaches as well personally that it does or could or possibly can impact them where it affects them. So it can go either direction, like you said, but I'm glad it's going in a good direction for you. Uh,
there was once that I had a client that I did, the day after I started talking to her, I picked up one of her symptoms. It thankfully wasn't a really bad one, but I just kind of laughed at it. I was like, that's really funny. That's not anything that I had ever considered to be even an issue. And then all of a sudden it
right.
was like, huh, that's
Yeah.
interesting. But it just more evidence again of like neuroplastic pain, that you can like pick this stuff up from talking to someone online.
The
Like, I
power, that's
caught
what I
it.
said. The brain is so sensitive. And if we're a little bit suggestible and we're a little bit anxious, I feel like it's a bad combination. It can blow things up. I had a lady I just talked to just a day ago, and she said, yeah, she's telling me about her hip. She got over this hip thing, but it blew up on her. And she said it was actually getting better. Then she talked to her mother-in-law or something who said something about her hip and that, oh, she was having this treatment for it and it wasn't helping. And all of a sudden after that, she said she could barely walk for the next week.
Mm,
And I go, wow,
Yeah.
isn't that incredible? And then she shared the opposite of that, where she said, you know what? We started walking again. She said, I went out on a really long hike, like 10 miles, and it was hurting. And I just keep, like you, repeating affirmations and being positive and reassuring her brain, it's fine, it's fine. It's going through a whole thing. And she said, after that, it was sore the next day. Then it went away. Then it just started going down. So in both directions, it could go,
Yeah.
negative, positive, as you know.
Yeah. Yeah. No, definitely.
It's quite
Definitely.
powerful. So great. So
Yeah.
you feel like the journey for you to get out of this knee thing was how long overall, would you say?
Um, I'd say I feel really, really confident. I'd say 6 years.
Mm-hmm.
About, yeah, like to get to a point where if I felt something in there that I really didn't have any fear anymore. Yeah, I would say probably about 6 years. But I don't, that wasn't 6 years of doing mind body work. That was 6 years from when I had the surgery. I'd say it took, because yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm in a lot of Facebook groups, and people always get frustrated that they hear these success stories and they're like, I've been doing this for 3 months and I'm not improving. And I'm just
Hmm.
like, I did not improve that quickly. Like
Yeah.
it really takes time, especially if you are like a really entrenched type personality type, like where your nervous system is go 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 all the time. And so that I find is the hardest part for people to recognize, that is a huge part of it, because that's to them that's normal. To them, being activated and being like constantly stimulated feels normal. And
Hmm.
so I think that is, I think a lot of times you can even read it, you can even hear it. And sometimes people post on these Facebook groups, I can just read their post and be like, okay,
Yeah.
like
You can
I can
sense it,
just
right?
by the words that you are using and how long your post is, and how like, you know, intense you sound, I can tell like that's what you got to deal with that first. And I think for me that was a big part of it. And it's not like I'm not perfectionistic anymore. I don't it's not, it's just like I'm aware of it.
Hmm.
And I can step out of it, and I can it's like breaking a habit. Like you don't
Hmm.
just stop being who you are, but you can start to notice how it's being detrimental and the ways that you can, um, you know, uh, step out of it if you can. And honestly, like one of the things that has helped me a little bit in a positive way, I have a 2-year old, 2.5-year old, and in some ways it triggers, and then in other ways it actually has helped me in that she's so in the present moment that I think that helps me a lot.
Hmm.
Just um, instead of being, constantly thinking, what do I have to do next? What do I have to do next? Go, 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 worry about the future. It helps to ground me a little bit. Like I still meditate every day and things like that, but just spending time with her actually, if she's not tantruming, it can be very, it can be very soothing and calming, just because like you just start to see things without the story and without
Hmm.
all of your baggage. And so I think in a way, that has kind of helped me step out a little bit of the personality. But yeah, I think that's, when I hear people wonder why it takes a long time, I think a lot of times it's because it's hard to do this work if you don't notice how your habits and the
Hmm.
way your mind works is impacting everything. And if you're not willing to look at that, or not, you know, self-compassion is another huge one. I've kind of find that people like they want to get rid of their symptoms, but it's almost like they um they feel like it's going to happen without them like showing themselves a little bit of self-love, self-compassion. Like I feel like a lot of people are so good at pleasing others and doing everything for other people, but then when you're like, this is your health, like you can take a few minutes to meditate, and but I don't have time. I have all these other things I need to do. And I'm just like, do you though?
Yeah, you're
You
not putting
really
yourself
like
first, right?
put yourself first. And I find like that is also a huge barrier that
Mhm.
people tend to have. Um, so yeah, I just I want people to know that it's not, some people do get better fast, and that's amazing. That's amazing. It's not normal, but it's amazing. And
Mhm.
some people it takes a few months, that's also great. But then some people it takes years. It does, it's a bumpy road, it goes up and down. There's times you question it. And yeah, it's and the hardest part is that you can't be your perfectionistic go self in order to get rid of it, because that's what
That's
a
part of
big
the
part of what
problem.
brought it on in the in the first
Right.
place. And I find that I think that's really frustrating for people. They're like, but I try so hard. Like,
I
yeah.
know. I know you're going in a loop, you're looping a treadmill. Yeah, no, you
Yeah.
great points. You made some great points. And I think all those are true, what you just said. Um, yeah, amazing. And and I really like you highlighted that it can take time because again, I think that timeline and that pressure and that and people think they're failing and you've kind of you just stay with the process, like I tell people put the timeline out far enough that it's not a timeline anymore in your mind and just do the processes and practices. But I really love that
Yeah.
story. I mean, I don't like that it took you that long to get better, but I like the fact that you show that, it doesn't matter. You got better and you just kept going and you finally figured out the right keys and tools and understanding. And then here you are now and helping other people to recover. So it's an awesome story.
Yeah. And I think the other reason it took me a long time is that, and I think the same for everyone, that not every technique helps everyone. Um, and so I tried a lot of things that didn't help me that much. Um, before. And honestly, I think the one kind, like if I had to pick a technique, it's Alan Gordon's PRT, which is why that's what I coach now, because that was the one that resonated the most with me, that got me the furthest in my recovery. Um, and I'm trying and learning other modalities and things like that. But personally, like it's a very straightforward approach, and doesn't involve a lot of like digging into trauma and things like that, which I know a lot of people need, but I'm not a psychologist, so like I knew I couldn't help people with that part of it, unless I go back to school, but I don't think it's happening. um, so, it was something that I felt was really tangible and something that I understood really, really well. And I think it helped me more than the journaling and some of the other stuff that
Mm,
I do recommend to people, because everything is different for different people, things
that's
that
right.
resonate with people. And so that's why I think curable is good, because it gives you so many different things to try. And if
Mm,
something doesn't seem to fit with you, then you just don't do that.
correct. And I
Um,
think in a way, like you're exactly right. I see the same thing in people. And if you think about you, I mean, from what I'm listening to you, that the primary emotion or thing was fear. So
mhm.
PRT really works on the fear, doesn't it? That's its main purpose is to reduce the fear around the symptom. So in a way, it's a very direct way to go and work with the symptom to reduce the person's fear. So it makes
Yeah,
sense that that would work for you because that was your
yeah.
primary emotion versus, let's say, somebody who's repressing anger, might be a little bit different strategy or trauma or some
Hmm.
other complexities here. So I agree. There's different components, different emotions. And yeah, but it's interesting to work the processes. You see what does work for people. I wish it was a cookie cutter you do this, but in a way, there are those tried and true tools like you teach.
Hmm.
And we do
Hmm.
know that if you work them, you'll find some that work for yourself typically. Um,
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, people ask like, what kind of meditation should I do? And I'm like,
yeah.
the one that you'll do. Like the
Mhm.
one that you want to do, like the one that
Mhm.
doesn't feel like a chore, the one that doesn't feel like it's like work, the one that feels good and that makes your
Mhm.
brain feel safe. And like that's all. It's so different for everybody.
It's different. Yeah. So maybe sure. I know we'll finish up here. And I'll link your if you have a website or credentials or what people want to reach out
Yeah,
to you.
sure.
So you're coaching now. I love how a lot of times these recoveries end up a person ends up helping other people now like you are. So if people want to reach out to you, you work through Zoom or you work over the internet.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, all my sessions are online. Even, I mean, I have clients here in Kenya and I still see them online. But yeah, I see people in the US, I see people in Europe. I mean, because I am in such a like weird time zone, I can kind of do the whole world. Doesn't really matter,
Hmm.
where they are, which is kind of nice. But yeah, my website is the easiest way to reach me, and um, I love working with people with in from completely different places. I actually didn't think, living here, I'd get that many clients from here, but I've actually it's somewhat some people have been kind of open to it, but I feel like it's not quite hit, it's already even slow to be on the uptick in Western countries, but in most of the people who I've worked with here are like expats from somewhere else, not so much
Hmm.
like local
Local.
Kenyans. I think if they have a pain, they either just live with it or go to the go to the hospital or something. Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
different kind of
Different
perspective, but
culture. And maybe share, I'm curious about that too. Just what is it like living there? Just share with us, the audience living. You moved from California, which is quite different from Kenya and Uganda.
yeah,
What's it like
yeah.
living?
I mean, it's honestly, it's the thing that I love the most about living here, to be 100% honest, is the weather. Like I've never lived in a place where it is between 70 and 80 degrees every single day. Like
Wow.
it's because Nairobi, where I live, is the same altitude as Tahoe, so it's high. So it's not like people think, oh, Africa, it's like a desert, it's always so hot. And yes, Uganda, when we lived in Uganda for 2 years, yes, I do not recommend it. Like wake up sweating at night and take cold showers every day. I did not enjoy that. But we literally live just a few hundred miles away from where we lived in Uganda. And because it's so high, there's a breeze, there's cool air. It's a beautiful, beautiful place to live in terms of weather. But the one thing that I do really miss about living in places like the Bay Area is outdoor activities. There's a lot of outdoor activities here, but they usually involve, I don't even that's not considered outdoor. You sitting in a car and looking at it,
Driving around.
which is amazing for the first like 10 times you do it, and then it does slowly get old.
Yeah.
Um, but
Right.
I'm a very active person, and I miss my, mountains and being able to go like trail running and things like that. That's definitely something I miss. But in terms of a place to live, it's very comfortable, and there's a lot of expats here. Our daughter has an amazing life. She just literally lives outside. 99% of her time she's outside, and
Hmm.
um, yeah, no, we definitely enjoy it. We enjoy it. There's things I miss about living back in the Bay Area, um yeah, no, we're quite happy. We're quite happy. And
Lots of good
my
runners
my
coming
husband,
out of there too. So you'll see a lot of people imagine running. Kenya's known for its
I mean, you don't really see them
runners.
running down the street. They if they are training, they're usually I think they're mainly training outside, at least not in Nairobi. I mean, if you're gonna run down the road in Nairobi, you're gonna end up with fumes in your lungs. I think a lot of them are from like, small villages, and they like, run barefoot in the savannah, running away from, you know. all the animals like I did.
That's why they
Uh,
run so fast. Yeah.
that's why they run so fast. No, you can see their physique, you see
Mm,
them. It's just like, yeah, that's a runner. But yeah, no, it's
that's
it's
amazing.
it's a really fun, interesting place to live for sure.
Yeah, cool. That's interesting little take at the end. I want to finish with that because it's such a different part of the world. I think a lot of people haven't been there or certainly don't live there. So it's interesting you're making a life out of it and coaching. So I really appreciate you coming on and being with
Yeah.
us today and sharing your story. I think it's powerful and it really shows you can get over these things and you have to get over the fear. And also you can have injuries too, like you said, that I think that's
Mhm.
important to highlight too, that we need to also recognize that that could be possible too and distinguish between the two. So I'm going to link your stuff on there. I really appreciate you sharing your story and being with us today. And yeah, all the best to you out there.
Thanks.
Okay. I'll
Thanks for
see you.
having me.